It's the return of the Security Weekly News. Welcome to the week of 4 May 2025. I'm Doug White. We've got for you Deepfake porn bots, Skype, DD, Venom Spider, CISA, IT Helpdesk, the amazing Rob Allen, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for the Security Weekly News. Imagine a world where every threat, ransomware, supply chain attacks, zero-day exploits, is stopped before it can even begin. ThreatLocker makes that world a reality with a zero-trust approach to cybersecurity. By giving you granular control on every executable that can happen in your environment, ThreatLocker protects your business around the clock. No more guessing, no more gaps, just rock-solid protection that keeps your operations running smoothly and your data secure. Discover how ThreatLocker's least privilege approach can safeguard your organization against known and unknown threats. Take the first step toward total peace of mind. Visit securityweekly.com/threatlocker today. All right, I'm Doug White, and it's the Security Weekly News. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment, or I'll just go back to San Francisco, and you'll never see me again. So there. Yeah, something like that. It was pretty nice. Well, anyway, we did make it to RSAC 2025. We made it back from there, and I only had minor delays. Some people had really bad delays, but it was a really big show. It was crazy busy, and in and around all the drinking. But thanks to Jeff Mann, I did get invited to several things that then gave me the look like, how did you get invited to this? But they did have free cigars, and I still managed to do 15 recordings while I was there. So it was great. Crew, thank you. Everybody did all the work. All I did was sit there. So thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed my NECCDC videos last week. If you didn't, you can go check them out if you missed them. And we are slowly, I think, putting up all the RSAC interviews on securityweekly.com. So yeah. And I got a new variant on my name today, too, in spam. Dr. Ugg, UG White. I was like, they were so impressed by my credentials that they spelled my name Ugg and invited me to the International Journal of Advanced Research in Orthopedics to submit because, I'm such well known in that field. But I could give it a shot. I've got a hammer and a chisel. So, yeah, who knows? All right. Skype died yesterday. The once ubiquitous video calling app was euthanized yesterday, 14 years after it replaced a product called Microsoft Live Messenger, which I'd actually never heard of, so I guess I never used that one. But Skype first came out in 2003, and it got sold to eBay for $2.6 billion, and then sold to Microsoft in 2011 for $8.5 billion, so I guess I wish I'd invented it. But in February of 2023, Microsoft said that over 36 million people were using Skype daily, which sounds like a lot, but actually kind of not a lot. But anyway, all their users are being advised to shift to Teams. Now, I bring this up because I think one of the things you should be thinking about is uncontrolled change. I mean, if your business model depends on a third-party piece of software, well, you may want to ensure that you understand all the implications if it's sold or they shut it down or they decide, gee, we're going to sell this product to, I don't know, a Chinese company. I mean, there's all kinds of issues there that you might want to think about when you're identifying all your software. Now, Microsoft gave everybody plenty of warning. They said, get your stuff out of the building before it's going to be demolished yesterday. But if you're that one guy still sitting in your basement apartment playing old Red Hot Chili Peppers on your base when the TNT goes off, well, that was oddly specific, but yeah. Anyway, now as if I wasn't paranoid enough, this article is about a supply chain attack with disk wiping tools, a la Star Trek.exe that we all know and love. But unlike the old Star Trek game, these were hidden in Golang modules that were published on GitHub. And the campaign was found last month, and it relied on 3 Go modules that had highly obfuscated code that would allow the retrieval of payloads and subsequent execution of said payloads. And one of the payloads was a bash script called done.sh that runs DD, our old DD command on Linux systems. And the DD command is one of those, very powerful system level commands like fdisk. In this case, it targeted /dev/SDA, which is usually the system boot disk on most Linux, Unix type stuff. Now, DD, if you're not familiar with it, is a command that was used to manipulate, create, destroy, copy anything to do with partitions on Linux. So it's very, very dangerous. Now, this is nothing new, of course. I mean, we've seen these kind of things so many times. It's not really that exciting. But I was thinking about it because I've been working on these experiments with ChatGPT, and as we vibe code more, ChatGPT is handing you a coding example, or you say, how do I do this with this? And it gives you something that has 35 different components to be installed, including sometimes GitHub modules. And you don't, maybe you're just saying, yeah, do it. Let's do it. Come on. And so you're basically just tossing in boxes of stuff they tell you to toss into the pot during the recipe without really knowing what's in those boxes. So you don't really, it could be pretty scary. So, did you know that if you say chat GPT, it means cat fart in French? Yeah, I learned that in the New York Times, I think. I think it was the New York Times. Highbrow, right? Yeah. Chat GPT. Right. Anyway, I'm sure somebody will criticize my pronunciation of that in French, but yeah. Anyway. Arctic Wolf said that Venom Spider has been going after HR professionals using phony resume submissions and fake personal websites. Okay. Not a bad idea. I thought of this years ago. I got asked to apply to a job, and they gave me all these instructions on what I had to do. And I got so frustrated with the application process that I decided I just wouldn't want to work there. I was if the application is this difficult to do, they had all this stuff where they had these little teeny boxes, and it was like, you must put your entire educational history in this box, no attached pages, and all this kind of ridiculous stuff. And it also said, and you may not leave anything out. And I was like, well, I've attended like 5 schools, and it had to have their name, their address, a contact number. And I'm like, literally the box was so small. I was like, how can I possibly fit this in there? So I was going to put it in little teeny font, but then it said you can't use little teeny fonts, and just on and on and on like that. And, it was like, come on. And, it was like, list every supervisor you've ever had in your life. It has to go in this like one box, and it has to their name, their address, their phone number. You may not exclude any supervisor that is you. And I'm like, okay, so I'm back in like 3rd grade. Like, well, they supervised that cookie sale. But anyway, I know, sorry, I got a little off there, but anyway, what would happen here, I was thinking, what if I sent them a script with a file name that just did something like, I don't know, DD, like we could just DD your hard drive. But, would they just open it because they got it? Well, guess what? Venom Spider, who specializes in low-hanging fruit, is doing just that. The attack looks like they're applying for a job, and they send a link to a professional website to get the resume. And then basically you go to the site, it's got a CAPTCHA challenge, it all looks real legit. But then you download it, and it's not a resume, it's an attack zip. Yeah, and it runs a JavaScript payload called more eggs, which is creepy sounding. I don't know why spider eggs are creepy and duck eggs are not, but you know how we are. But it's like it's a backdoor. So yeah, it also launches a clever WordPad to put that up on the screen to keep you occupied instead of seeing all those shells opening in the background. You're just looking at the WordPad going, what is this? And then, that kind of thing. So as ever, endpoint security is critical, right? We're going to talk with Rob about that in a little bit too, because I know he was bringing up some more issues about endpoint security, but this is another example of that. You just got some poor HR clerk that's sitting there going, I got to download all these stupid applications, and you can't even trust old Gil who's applying for the job. By the way, if anybody's looking for a slightly used faculty member that only gives C lectures on Sunday, give me a call. Yeah, might be nice. One of the interviews I did at RSAC was talking about middle-sized companies and how they kind of miss out, not to mention small companies, of course. And a study by CrowdStrike found that only 11% of small and medium-sized businesses, which they call SMBs, have adopted AI-powered defenses. Now, I have some, immediate hesitation about this AI-powered defenses stuff anyway, but in the study, small businesses were the furthest behind, which I don't think that any of this is a surprise. In companies with fewer than 50 employees, only 47% of them even had a security plan in place at all, which again doesn't shock me a bit. And more than half of those companies allocated less than 1% of their annual budget to cybersecurity. And believe me, I've talked to some of those companies, and their annual budget for cybersecurity was like, here's $12, a couple of old Subway tokens, and we'll buy you lunch. Can you completely secure our entire company and we'll sue you if you don't. Yeah. Or even better is the one where they go, I bet you and some of your students would love to come over and help us with our security. It's kind of a, fun time thing to do. Yeah, I get those. But anyway, I mean, and you don't see a lot of small company booths at RSAC either, right? Although some people had puppies and goats and lasers, and I heard there was a dancing hyena, but I think I missed that part. The Explo Floor was kind of like the show Lost. If you've ever seen that show, there was a lot of stuff going on. Most of it was incredibly confusing and you didn't understand any of it, but you kind of wanted to keep watching, that kind of thing. Anyway, the research, they said 93% of the SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses, not server message blocks. I was first going, what are they talking? Yeah. 93% of them considered themselves security knowledgeable, which is kind of like people considering themselves great negotiators. They've done studies on that. And you go like, are you a good negotiator? Hell yeah. Yeah. But they're not. 83% had a plan in place, but only 6% are investing in new tools. And it wasn't exactly clear what all that meant. But I mean, not many companies are catering to these organizations' price points typically. Sid's Laundry and Washamat probably can't afford a lot of fancy AI defensive systems, but they may well need them, and they may well now be connected to the Sudsateria via Wi-Fi and have Bluetooth enabled, like dryers and who knows what. So it's kind of a scary study, but not at all surprising at the same time. I mean, based on the calls I get. Now, in that same light, at RSAC, I heard AI a lot. I mean, a lot. Free AI with every screen squeegee you take. I mean, AIs were trying to jump in your swag bag as you walk past just to get like a new home. Or maybe I was seeing things. I told Jeff not to make me drink all those corpse revivers, but he did anyway. But anyway, the article was about how everyone is going crazy trying to AI everything. And of course, AI everything means something has to power all those lonely conversations you have with Gemini. And of course, people are jumping on the so-called AI infrastructure train because, we need all that. Now, McKinsey and Company said there is widespread unease about overinvestment in AI infrastructure. Honestly, to be fair, there's widespread unease about everything. I mean, there's widespread unease about what clothes I'm going to wear today. But they originally estimated that AI workloads might require $7.9 trillion in new investment by 2030 in order to keep up with demand. But then they start hedging a lot. They start talking about how this really kind of depends on a lot of things, which is like me saying my annual budget will require $500,000 per month by 2030, unless I quit going, that kind of thing. So, I mean, in the scenario where everything, their 7.9 trillion was everything, every word you speak, every can of baked beans, everything's AI enabled by 2030. Well, they started off by saying 7.9 trillion. And then they started saying, well, it could be as low as 3.7 trillion or 5.2 trillion or 6 and 7/8. It was like, it wasn't, I was just kind of like, okay, so I think we're just throwing numbers at a dartboard here. I mean, really, it was described simultaneously as a bubble or getting in on the ground floor. So like a lot of things, I don't know whether to buy in, sell it all, convert all your cash into gold bars or shotgun shells and bury them in the forest. Yeah, I mean, who knows? And I don't think they do either. And I think that's, of course, what speculation is all about, right? I mean, that's why the market works the way it does. Somebody thinks, it's going up. Somebody thinks it's going down. And somebody's got all their money in gold bars and shotgun shells. Meanwhile, AI-enabled creamed corn. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Well, new plans from the U.S. White House, never a phrase you want to hear. New plans from the U.S. White House are signaling even more cuts to CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency of the United States. Apparently, around $491 million of additional cuts are being considered after the agency has been accused of being a censorship industrial complex. Apparently, they're all after somebody's First Amendment rights. Now, typically in politics, when somebody gets called that, it means they just don't agree with what they're saying. But the claim is that these cuts will refocus CISA on their core mission while eliminating weaponization and waste. cuts have already created a bit of chaos, of course. But you remember the rumors a couple of weeks ago about that MITRE CVE programs would all be eliminated, and everybody freaked out. And then by afternoon, they're like, "Oh no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that." And so it seems to be the way a lot of things now. So who knows? Maybe these cuts will happen. Maybe they won't. Basically, it's chaos, business as usual. It sure seems a little bit scary to me, though, at this point. NCSC, which is the British version of CISA, is the National Cybersecurity Center, spelled RE, of course. They issued warnings that retailers are being targeted by the old, and I saw this and I went, oh, I can't believe this. The old fake IT help desk trick. I mean, I literally did this from a payphone, like a physical payphone that you put coins in, back in 1986, and it worked. I was calling people at the bank and telling them I was from IT, although I called it something, I think I called it data processing. But, I told them that their account had been hacked. Somebody was using it. And I just need to verify real quickly that they were the owner of the account, because they just give me their password, mother's maiden name, and employee ID number. And guess what? I got about 80% on the first round. It worked then, it works now, right? Now in England, Marks and Spencer, Co-op, and Harrods all are like retailers, and they've gotten targeted with this scam in the last 2 weeks. And according to the NCSC, they said based on an anonymous notification to them, more attacks are on the way. Their guidance, of course, encouraged something that I think is a good idea. Review your IT help desk password reset process, and even your IT help desk password contact process. I mean, I have received emails, been contacted by IT help desk, both legit and illegit, telling me I need to do something. And I got one once from an institution where they had already sent out something, say they would never contact me. And they literally contacted me. And I basically said, get bit, and hung up on them. And then I got yelled at because I hung up on some, that kind of thing. But all this goes back to the whole identity issue, in my opinion. I mean, there's so many issues with this right now. What if the CEO calls and tells you to reset your password right now, this very instant, and it sounds like them? I mean, I don't know what you do. Do you tell them to go to hell and hang up? Or do you go, I don't know what I should do here? I mean, it's kind of like when the CEO calls and asks to meet you in a hotel room somewhere in Hollywood. You kind of go, I'm not sure what I should do here. I really want that part. But I mean, if somebody calls you requesting a change of your account, or account number routing, or your bank account information, and so forth, it really is critical that your employees understand the policy and what should be happening and what's going to be an anomaly. And so that all comes back to identity management. So be sure you understand your processes and that you're following those processes and that they make sense, and that your employees understand that process as well. Or, somebody may convince Miss Marilyn down in shipping that they need to validate their account, and then you're going to have a big, big problem. Yeah. All right. Well, like no one else, he can arrive like a speeding bullet from the airport to do an interview on the spot with just like very, very amazing. Rob Allen, who's our friend and been on the show quite a few times, and we're always happy to have him. Threat Locker. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Doug. How are you?
I'm great. And
I want to know more about the AI baked beans. Could you elaborate on that?
They eat you. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Once ingested, they just sort of have a life of their own. It's like that. There's a race in Bromley. They have a race in Bromley, or I don't know if they still have it, but I saw it once. And people, you have to run from place to place, and at each station you have to stop and eat a plate of baked beans and drink a pint, and then you run to the next station. It gets really graphic by the end.
I can well imagine. I kind of wish I couldn't.
Yeah, but hey, it's Bromley. Anyway, you had a story about insider threat, and this has always been something that I have harped on for years and years and years with companies when we were talking to them about potential threats and threat surfaces and so forth. That as far back as even long before there was the internet, we were talking about insider threats, on the, to the mainframe, to mini computers, to computer labs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So fill us in on this thing. I read the story, but let's hear your take.
Well, I mean, there is a question as to whether you would consider it to be an insider threat. I mean, is it insider threat? Is it supply chain? It's probably a little bit of a gray area. But big warning here, which is ongoing criminal investigation. Don't want to get into too much details. Don't know if the guy did it or not. Don't sue me. But it was an article I saw the other day about a CEO of a cybersecurity company who apparently had been arrested. According to him, he wasn't. So again, don't know. Don't want to state any facts. But the couple of really interesting takeaways from it was to do with malware being installed in a hospital. Interesting takeaways were, number one was just the physical access issue, which was the two affected machines, one of which was just in a public waiting area, which he assumed was just a machine that was there for people to use, but the other perhaps less so, but he just walked up and jiggled the mouse and got into the computer. So that's the interesting sort of physical access part of that. And to be honest, I've seen that myself, and hospitals seem to be particularly prone to that. So you've got 3, 4, 5 different computers sitting around in a hospital ward. You got maybe 1 or 2 staff who are running around basically doing what they're supposed to do, which is looking after people. And the computers themselves are basically, in a lot of cases, they're just wide open and accessible. And look, that applies to some businesses as well. It's not just hospitals, but it seems to be a particular problem there. But the other really interesting part of it, from my perspective, was that the supposed malware was not actually malware. It was a PowerShell script, or a piece of PowerShell, effectively, that took a screenshot of the computer and uploaded it to his location online. And it just shows that you don't need malware. You don't need to run malware to perform a cyber attack. I mean, this is, all sorts of data protection issues and everything else. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's just PowerShell screenshot, copy from here to there. Now, who's to say if that's good or bad? I mean, if realistically, if your strategy is to wait for malware to run and then respond to it, then you're not going to see any of that. And we've actually tested this in a number of different circumstances. Since then, we've actually put it onto a rubber ducky, because when I saw the PowerShell, I went, "Ooh, that could come in useful." And we basically say, "Hey, just plug this into your computer." Now we've not had any, unlike our data exfiltration rubber ducky, which a lot of people have volunteered for. We're going to take screenshots of your computer rubber ducky has been less successful on that front, but people will come around. I'm sure they will come around.
Yeah, I mean, just to get back to the whole hospital thing. I mean, part of that is I did some HIPAA stuff with doctors' offices, and I remember when my daughter was being born, they had computers in the room, and I was able to change terminals. So they were all Linux. So, it was a GUI sitting on top of Linux that looked very custom. But if you just escape the GUI, then all of a sudden I could pull terminals in from any terminal that was in all these different rooms. And we were looking at, in fact, I got the anesthesiologist so distracted. My wife had to yell about it. She was just like, "I'm here. There's something stuck in my back." And he was like, "Oh my God. Yeah." And he was like, "This is very interesting." And but when I was talking to doctors about this, one of the things we got as pushback was when somebody comes in and they've got an ice pick stuck through their eyeball. I don't have time to sit down and type in a 36-character password, use my thumbprint, and then also get a message on my phone to validate that I'm who I say I am. I need to be able to hit the space bar and the machine comes up so I can put these notes in. I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, what's your take on that?
That's a really good question. I mean, and again, it's not an unreasonable position to hold, which is I need access into this quickly. Now, there's probably somewhere of a sweet spot between jiggle a mouse and I'm into a computer and typing in a 36-character alphanumerical passcode and getting a text message and whatever the other thing you said was. There's probably a happy medium somewhere between those two things. Whether it be an 8-character password or any sort of a password is better than no password whatsoever. So yeah, I mean, look, all security is a trade-off between convenience and security to a greater or lesser degree, but it's probably too far on the convenient side than on the security side in that particular example.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly things like facial rec and fingerprint type recs and things like that have really, facilitated a lot of this stuff so that, if somebody doesn't actually have to do anything other than just shove their face in front of the camera. And I mean, and I know there's all kinds of ways around that stuff, but this has always been a huge problem because insiders or anybody who has physical access, I've always told my students, if you have physical access, it's over. I mean, I've always lived with that belief that if somebody's in your server room, you're done. They're going to find a way to, I mean, if nothing else, they just take a fire axe and take all the servers out and go, there you go. And I mean, and you've got insiders like that. They're getting frustrated with things, as well as people trying to do more nefarious sorts of things. Like there was another case just a few weeks ago with somebody who had, he was basically streaming all the cameras out of I think it was also a hospital, and he was streaming the live feeds and catching people doing all sorts of things they weren't supposed to be doing. And, he was angry about something or other, and on and on. Did it say why this guy why was the guy doing this? He was just
unclear. And as I said, active investigation. Don't want to get into too much detail. He has his story. Evidently, others have their story, but yeah, unclear.
Okay. Well, I think all of us face that. I mean, anybody that has physical facility is going to face these kind of problems.
Well, it to some extent, it depends on the extent of the physical access. So I'm fully on board with you. If somebody's got physical access to your server room, then it is realistically game over. A lot of cases, if you got physical access to a machine, I mean, it's not that difficult to get up to no good. You would hope that people will get spotted doing it, but there's probably there's a happy medium. I mean, one of the examples a customer of ours actually gave me, they'd been bought. It was a company that were bought by PE, and they were subjected to, and I love this expression, was it an aggressive pen test? Call it an aggressive penetration test, right? Which I was like, that sounds uncomfortable. But as part of this, basically, there was a physical aspect to it. So basically, some dude tailgated somebody into the main waiting area of the company, didn't try and go any further. They basically then tailgated somebody into the bathroom of the company, hung out in the bathroom for a little while, and then tailgated somebody from the bathroom into like the main working area, and proceeded to plug themselves into the network. Now, again, that's a level of physical access. It's not I've got physical access on your servers or access on your servers, but again, they're connected to the network. So you're thinking at that point, the interesting one about this was these guys had been preparing for this aggressive penetration test, and had basically set up our network control. So effectively blocking all unauthorized network traffic within the environment. So the guy plugged the machine in, he couldn't see a damn thing on the network. There was no servers visible. There was no laptops to move laterally to. There was literally nothing there. So that kind of physical access need not be game over territory. Whereas, as I said, physical access, I got my hands on your server right now, is probably realistically game over territory.
But that endpoint stuff is all about privilege, and it's about privilege of both the user privilege as well as the device privilege. And I think people often don't equate, they don't consider both of those things. They're just like, oh, there's a login. Okay, well, maybe they have a login, or maybe they don't even need a login, or the person left it logged in. But that device ought to also have its, its ability restricted.
Absolutely.
Because you shouldn't have an empty office, or even a valid, they walked into Steve's office yesterday. He's on vacation. They should not be able to just sit down at that machine. And I always call that the how to succeed in business without really trying attack. Because if you don't know, that's an old Broadway play from the 60s about a guy who just walks into a New York office building, finds an office and sits down and assumes the part of an executive. They never explained how he got paid, but who knows? Maybe they did. I don't remember. It's been a long time. But I think these kind of attacks are very possible. I don't know how prevalent they are, but I think they're definitely a huge threat surface with people just wandering in off the street, even because we had that at a university where people were wandering in off the street and sitting down in our computer labs, and we didn't have a control for that. And one guy was actually running a business off of our computer lab. He just literally set up a business and left it running in the background. It was pretty clever. And, he would come in a couple of times a day and check on it. And somebody finally noticed him, and they were like, who is that guy? He looks a little old to be a freshman or whoever. And one of us went over and said, hi, can you show us your student ID? And he ran, and then I like immediately air gapped the machine and took it. And then we found all of his stuff and his business. And then he actually got all outraged that we shut his business down. I thought he was going to sue. They thought he was going to sue the school.
Really?
Yeah. And they were like, "Are you kidding me?" But there was some laws in that state that said, misuse of state funded equipment could not be. It wasn't like like porn or something. It was just, I don't know what he was selling, but he had like a little storefront set up on the early internet, and he's running it off of
basically the old school equivalent of crypto miners.
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was just like a physical crypto miner. He was coming in every day to fill his orders and everything and sitting in the lab. He claimed because he was a citizen of the state, he had every right to use state equipment for whatever purpose he wanted.
I
They
see.
they determined that was not
That's an
true.
interesting strategy, Cotton. Let's see how that works out for you.
It didn't. But
No.
but I mean, I think these things are very prevalent. I think that your story is a lesson for everybody listening, that you do need to consider that somebody's going to walk up to a machine. Even if you have policies against it and so on and so forth. And again, the inconvenience starts to rear its ugly head, right? But every time you stop typing, the system logs you out and you have to log back in. And it's like, oh, again. But I mean, it's a real threat, and people being able to plug in flash drives and rubber duckies, or you and I were talking about keystroke loggers earlier. We used to put keystroke loggers on keyboard connections, and just literally took 3 seconds. You walk in an empty office, plug it in, and you're done. And you can come back a week later and take it back out. Even if you walk in the office and the person's there, they go, "Oh, hey, we had a test on your system. We need to remove it." And they're just like, "Yeah, let me just finish what I'm typing here." And you're like, "Good. You could log in again if you want to. That's fine. Just to make
It's
sure."
it's actually interesting you should mention it, because we're obviously big fans of Hack5, who make the rubber duckies and the OMG cables and everything else. And forgive me, I'm probably going to get the name of this wrong, but I think they've got it's either a shark jack or some awesome name, but basically it's a HDMI device. And it's effectively the physical equivalent of that PowerShell script that the guy used, or the PowerShell commands that the guy used. Because what it does is it takes a screenshot of everything that happens between your computer and the monitor, which is basically all screenshots. Can either store them or send them off over the internet to wherever you want. So it's effectively the physical equivalent of that. Now, again, that's a lot harder to stop, because somebody gets in, they plug one of these into the back of a computer, HDMI in, HDMI out. Who's going to even notice?
Nobody.
Realistically. And again, there's very much nothing to detect in that particular circumstance. So yeah, I mean, physical access and controlling physical access and being aware of what's around is certainly. And look, I don't know how often they're used in reality in the wild. Probably not often, but it is an incredibly clever piece of hacking tool kittery.
Yeah. And once you add in all the people that are actually nefarious, the people that are innocently screwing around, and the people that are insider angry, who have access to your facilities, it really becomes a serious chunk of threat surface to me. And I've been harping on it since the 90s, so maybe even before that, because we had problems with this in computer labs in the 80s, with people sitting down at the mainframe, and some kid gets up to go to the bathroom, and somebody sits down and erases everything in their files or whatever, or just copies it all off and moves it over to another account. Just crazy stuff like that.
I think it was the first program I ever wrote. Not going quite far as back as the 80s, I'm not going to lie, Doug, but one of the first programs I wrote in college was basically just one that mimicked a login screen. Just there waiting, type in username and password. Yeah. I've now got your username and password. Yeah.
Shell fake. I mean, believe me, we've all written shell fakes. It's like, this looks, and then the one I had would even actually let you log in. And it passed the instructions that you typed on into the system, but at the same time, it forwarded all that into a text file. And I just echoed all that into a text file on my account. So anybody that logged in on that shell, I could see their username and password. And I was a sysop, leave me alone. But anyway, thank you for coming in, Rob. That's a great story. I think it's a great lesson, and we sure appreciate your time.
No problem at all, my friend.
All right. My last one, porn knows no bounds. That's my, I'm going to have it put on a flag or something. It's $1 trillion industry, really. I mean, like it or hate it, doesn't matter. I'm not advocating it. I'm not disadvocating. I'm just saying it's there. Why did Betamax die? Well, reputedly because the porn industry chose the VHS format. I don't know, but I do know this. People like to see other people naked. I mean, that's just a thing, right? I mean, they do. I don't know why. I mean, but they do, except me. My OnlyFans really didn't get off the ground, but it's still there if you're interested. But Mr. Deepfakes, which is a huge site for a while, was one of the most popular destinations for deepfake porn. People were paying up to $1,500 to use the face swapping AI so they could put Betty White's face on, I don't know, Chris Farley's body and make porn videos with, Chris Farley and Brad Pitt and a pro wrestler. I don't know. what you fantasize about. But people spend immense amounts of time on pornography. They make porn games. They make porn sites, porn sharing, porn cocktails, porn in a blanket, anything that to do with nudity and so forth. People want it. But according to this article, researchers found that 43,000 videos on Mr. Deepfake were viewed more than 1.5 billion with a B times on the Mr. Deepfake platform. And it was generated by 4,000 creators. And they're making money off this, mind you. Now, Mr. Deepfake is gone. It went dark this weekend. It's not clear exactly what happened, and they're not saying. I'm sure it'll be back in some other form soon enough. But the Deepfake platform supposedly relied on free tier cloud GPT access that was provided by Google Colab notebooks. And Google also declined to respond on whether or not they blocked them out. Now, the U.S. Congress has probably by now, when the story was written, they hadn't passed it yet. They're passing an act called the Take It Down Act, which would require platforms to remove real and AI-generated non-consensual intimate imagery within 48 hours of the victim's report. I put it down in the big book of naivete. Good luck getting anything off the internet, and porn's gonna porn. I mean, it is. And I mean, I hope for the best with these laws because I've seen people really get abused by this stuff. But, and maybe you say, who cares? And it's just fun. But, when somebody's face that, maybe yours, is being slapped onto a porn star's body and being distributed in some kind of horrendous balloon animal abuse videos, you might not like it so much. And I did a couple of cases like that. But anyway, I do presume that this law will do little to stop the proliferation of this stuff anyway, because it's just there and I don't know what to do about it. But anyway, that is the news. Thank you, Rob Allen from Threat Locker. And we hope to see all of you next time on the Security Weekly News.